The president spoke about gun control at a White House meeting with governors today, and he didn't hold back about reports that multiple officers stayed safe outside the school as shots rang out and children died inside. Watch.
I got to watch some deputy sheriffs performing this weekend. They weren't exactly Medal of Honor winners, all right? The way they performed was, frankly, disgusting.
We also know that both local law enforcement and the FBI dropped the ball on numerous warnings and red flags that psycho was going to explode. There are also now reports that cops blocked emergency medical personnel from entering the building to help the wounded. So does law enforcement need to take a step back and review how to handle these situations and rethink some of their training? Let's go to my sweetest honey party panel tonight. He's the host of the Tom Shillue Show on Fox News Radio. Tom Shillue is here, along with Fox News political analyst Jimmu Green, and author of Dear Reader, the unauthorized autobiography of Kim Jong-il, the host of You're Welcome. It is Michael Malice. Welcome back, everyone.
Yeah.
So, Tom, let's talk a little bit about this sheriff. My brother, who's been in law enforcement for years, called me and he was like, why is he throwing that officer under the bus that he conceivably trained? And as his comments came out over the weekend, he showed that perhaps those deputies were not properly trained. And if they were following protocol, and protocol is to stay outside, well, there's, a madman inside gunning down 17 people. There's something really wrong with the way that department is run.
Yeah, especially when he said yes to his invitation to go to Jake Tapper's little anti-gun party there. And he knew about the deputy situation, we're finding out, before he went in there and then made it all about the NRA. But I think we know why he's throwing people under the bus, because they got a whole lot of problems down there, and they didn't do their job. They weren't prepared, but he doesn't seem to know how to handle and he's not going to take any blame on this. He keeps sloughing things off on other people. We'll see how well that works for him.
Yeah, and he's a politician. This is a person who has to run for office. And if I were one of those parents and more of this information was coming out about the number of times they responded to domestic violence calls and didn't do anything. So, and the point of being a law enforcement officer, it's not to babysit children. It's not to give them stern warnings. And, maybe there was an over-reliance on that, but you also have to put an end to it by sort of codifying this, so there's something at least on the record about that violent behavior.
Kennedy, I am here for this conversation because it is about time that everyone, conservatives, allow this conversation to happen. Yes, there are training issues when it comes to local law enforcement.
And federal law enforcement.
And federal law enforcement. We should be able to say that. Guess who's been saying that for a long time? Black Lives Matter. Guess who shut them down? The conservatives, who said absolutely not. You cannot say anything negative against them. Now, I do
Okay, now you bringing up Black Lives Matter is like Ann Coulter bringing up immigration.
No. This is a conversation about training of local law enforcement that needs to be addressed. There's no question that there were systemic failures that need to be addressed. I think this local sheriff has learned from the best communicator out there.
Black Lives Matter,
Trump,
if
no
I'm not wrong,
taken.
The point is to withhold lethal force. And here the exhortation is there should have been more lethal force. So it's actually the opposite of what you're talking about.
The point is to have better training.
Okay, yeah, the point is to take responsibility for what went wrong. The FBI is not doing that. Christopher Wray and his feel-good memo isn't doing that. And certainly this sheriff in Broward County isn't doing it. Mike?
As an anarchist, I'm going to out Jimmu. It drives me crazy when conservatives, and I apologize for being hoarse, will defend the government having a monopoly on protecting our kids through the police. They criticize the government with the IRS. They criticize every other industry. The politics and the economics are the same. This is what happens. There's no accountability. There will never be an accountability. Yeah. If you have a privatized police force with competition, you would have layers of protection instead of relying on this guy. Listen, I'm a Zionist. This is one Israel we could do without.
Okay, so but let me ask you this. So when you talk about privatizing a police force, are you also talking about arming teachers?
Absolutely, and I'm also talking about eliminating public schools, which are prisons for children, which fuel mental illness and all sorts of violence.
Well, no, you're absolutely. If you can't get kicked out of school,
right,
and so you're sitting there for years and you're brooding, and the people who are supposed to treat you and diagnose you miss all the signs,
right,
and then file reports and say, hey, nothing to see here.
And then you have social promotion where you graduate with a diploma, which means nothing, which means now everyone has to go to college, which is 4 years when they could be working. Instead, they're being brainwashed by the leftist.
Yeah, and just putting off a problem from one institution to the next. I absolutely agree with that. And I think, within this, there's also a conversation to be had about, what are schools? And is it right to expect that 3,000 kids can be housed in the same place in the same way at the same time, and we have safety and good results?
Yeah, you know, a lot of people talk about, you know, the issue of small class size has always been something people talk about. Small school size. This is something I'm talking about on the radio a lot with people. Some of these schools are just huge. They're just too big, and there's no way to protect them, to create a security apparatus that's going to secure these schools because they're just so massive. Yes.
There are absolutely ways to protect them. Other countries find that way. You know what is happening right now? And the NRA is happy this conversation is happening. The blame has shifted to law enforcement.
As it should.
It's come off of them. And we are so focused on what are the symptoms? How can we treat the symptoms? You know what the root cause of mass shootings is? It's guns. And so it's the NRA,
that's actually a symptom.
It's the lobbyists and the gun manufacturers.
The root cause is the mental illness and the person who is so damaged they want to do harm. The mental
for the mass shootings.
The derangement and the violent mental disorder, that is the root cause.
So we're the only country that has these issues. No other countries have issues with mental illness amongst young people. No other countries have issues of school class size and how large the schools are. This is only in America. What is only in America is our inability to shut the NRA down. And I'm not going to sit here and allow them to win the conversation by shifting all of the focus to law enforcement,
last word,
shifting all of it to mental health.
The NRA are the moderates. It's Gun Owners of America, which actually stand up for Second Amendment rights. So people haven't figured that out. They're the cowards in this situation.
The NRA?
Yes.
Wow, Michael dropping bombs, talking about guns. All right. We'll be back with the panel. Don't you worry about that. They're returning a little later in the show. We're going to talk about President Trump next, calling the Democratic memo release a political and legal bust. Adam Schiff argues that it confirms the FBI acted appropriately. So which is it? Judge Andrew Napolitano clarifies next.
I ain't happy. I'm feeling glad I got sunshine in a bag. I'm useless, but not for long. The future.
See what's just coming on right now. Well, the war on drugs was and is a failure. But according to a new report, the president is looking to crack down on drug trafficking in a new and potentially very extreme way. According to inside sources at the White House, the president often talks about executing high-volume drug dealers. We're told he got the idea from the Prime Minister of Singapore, who reportedly told him that the reason they have no drug issues there is because drug dealers usually get the death penalty. The president has allegedly admitted that he knows it would be near impossible to get a law like that passed in these United States, but it is proof that nobody in government has any good idea when it comes to drug policy. Party panel is back. Tom Shalhoub, Jamil Green, and Michael Malice. So if you really want to throw a monkey wrench into the system of drug dealers, do you agree that the best thing you can do is to legalize drugs?
Yeah, my friend moved to Singapore, and in fact, in the airport on the way to Singapore, it tells you if you have any drugs in your pockets, this is the bathroom to throw them out because we will kill you.
Yeah.
And people from Australia come to Singapore every year. But Singapore
doesn't sound like a utopia, oddly enough.
It's not, but Singapore is also a small island.
Yeah.
The idea to have the president blithely talking about people who are, it's the pharmaceutical companies who are causing all sorts of problems at a far greater scale than any street drug dealer. And frankly, what I'm upset about is during the campaign, he promised us the wall. Where's the wall? He also promised us he's going to be executing journalists. They're all still here. So this guy's gone back on everything.
So you don't think that his words hold as much weight?
Well, I think if we're going to be talking about shooting people, he should be talking about the people he promised during the campaign and not bringing up new people to shoot.
But he also says if we take a softer approach to drug use and drug addiction, it doesn't work. But I would argue that the harder approach actually hasn't worked.
I would agree with you. I think that every politician says crazy things behind closed doors, and if you're a fly on the wall, you probably need to get your ears.
Do you think he says crazier stuff
out
behind closed doors or in front of closed doors?
Well, I think he's a special circumstance where it's probably both. But my concern is that where they may just be, talking off and not actually going to do anything, there's a real concern that he will try to take action. Now, when you look at this president having called for the death penalty for the innocent young men who were a part of the Central Park Five, and what was behind that, a lot of people will say, is racism. I think the president is thinking, oh, well, yeah, let's kill all of these drug dealers because they're all black. And that's very concern.
I don't think he's saying that necessarily. I think that's a bit of a logical stretch, but I will say
I wouldn't be
drugs
surprised.
have been, I know, because you think he's racist and he should be impeached because of his racism, although you won't define racism for me. But I also think that, and I know that drugs were made illegal in this country for very racist reasons explicitly throughout the 20th century. I mean, there's no mystery there. But when he talks about drugs, I don't think that he is, and perhaps there are some people on his cabinet who feel that way and who have, racist strains coursing through their veins.
I don't know why he stopped at Singapore. He should go Philippines and kill the drug users, right? Isn't that what the Philippines
Go big or go home, Tom.
Yeah, exactly. No, the thing is, this comment was just like his, you have to kill the families comment, which he said in private and then said it in public.
Yeah, when he was talking about ISIS.
Yes, killing the families of terrorists. He didn't think that there was ever going to be a bill introduced called Kill the Families, but he just wants everyone to know that he's the type of guy who wants to go after the families. He thinks outside of the box.
Yeah, he wants big results. He wants to do something that actually makes a dent in this issue. But
for someone who was so afraid to go off to war himself, he sure is in favor of a lot of killing. But to your first question, Kennedy, let's legalize it.
Amen.
Amen.
All right, we're going to start during the break. Thank you, Michael, Jamu, and Tom. Great to see you all.